Today, we're going to hear from a true pioneer in the field, Penijean Gracefire, who is a neurofeedback provider who has been using various techniques to combine real-time brain training with several different types of interventions for the past 20 years. She's going to tell us all about her practices with red light therapy to unlock her clients' brain's full potential. If you're new to this channel, I'm Dr. Cody Rall, a U.S. Navy trained psychiatrist who has spent the last decade testing and reviewing different brain wearables and techniques to improve the cognitive performance of my clients. In this episode, we'll dive into the red light therapy setups that Penijean recommends, how to use them properly for brain optimization, the biggest mistakes she sees when people get into using red light therapy to improve their brain performance, and how AI-powered stimulation protocols could soon take your brain performance to levels that we've never seen before. If you're looking for deeper answers on how to personalize brain stimulation using red light therapy for sleep, mood, focus, or even meditation training, this episode is packed with insights that I've never heard before, and I think that you'll really enjoy, so let's jump in. But right before we do that, I want to quickly mention that I've put together a free red light therapy buyer's guide PDF. I actually ran brain maps on myself with each V-Light model and even tested the light penetrance through real human skull. So you'll see data in here that you won't find anywhere else. There is a link in the YouTube description below where you can go to the download page to get your free guide.
Why do we care about neurotech or red light therapy or any of this? Everybody wants the same stuff. We all want to feel safe, connected, and significant. The main things that really functionally, operationally, that we need to be able to do to feel safe, connected, and significant is we need state flexibility and we need processing speed. Our brain needs to be able to adapt to what's happening in real time, and our brain needs to have the bandwidth to take in all the inputs, make decisions, and respond in ways that keep us safe and keep us connected and keep us competent. If I only do neurofeedback, I might do some really excellent information or education of your brain to form better neural networks, but if you don't have the juice to use them, it's not going to be as helpful. Red light therapy is the perfect precursor to helping the brain metabolize and generate activity at the mitochondrial cellular level. How are we supposed to tell a brain how to power up? There's a lot of different ways we can do it. Eat the right things, exercise, circulate oxygen through your system. But I mean, let's say you're doing all the right stuff and you still can't quite get there. Something like red light therapy actually creates an energetic activation effect at the cellular level.
Well, thanks so much for joining me today. I have Penijean Gracefire with me, and I listened to your presentations on the V-Light YouTube page, and I was like, I have to get Penijean on the channel just because of your depth of knowledge when it comes to not only red light therapy, but also neurofeedback and a lot of the other interventions that have been around for some time as far as clinical work with neurofeedback and mental health treatment goes. So I'd love to get your background story of how initially you got into neurofeedback and what you've tried over the years and have sort of led you to focusing on red light therapy treatment at this time.
Sure. Thank you for that kind introduction. I am also excited to be here. I think you're doing excellent work with your channel. It is so critical, and something I'm also passionate about is bringing accessible information education to just the general public about some of these neurotech options that are available. I got into this because 1,000 years ago, okay, 20, when I was in graduate school for mental health and rehabilitation. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, and I think most people's perceptions of mental health counselors is we do a lot of talking, and that is true. I am a talker, part of the reason it appealed to me. But what I encountered very early on, so my first job was working at a substance abuse rehabilitation center with legally mandated clientele. And I ran a lot of groups. I did a lot of intakes, I did a lot of counseling. And one of the things that absolutely stood out to me working with a substance abuse population was that almost everybody had a background of either brain injury and or trauma, PTSD. And they had a lot of things that were happening to their brains and bodies that no matter how clever my little cognitive behavioral strategies were, if they couldn't retain and implement them, I wasn't really doing help by just talking at people. So The next thing that I looked for was how can I better understand what's happening in somebody's brain and the things that they can't tell me. And so my next step was looking into brain mapping, quantitative EEG brain mapping. EEG stands for electroencephalogram. So encepha is brain and gram is picture, like Instagram. And so an electrical encephalogram is essentially a picture of the electrical activity in your brain. So a lot of times when we think brain scanning, we think like, fMRI or a CAT scan, things that look at metabolic measures, right? The electrical imaging allows for us to do one or two things that metabolic imaging doesn't. One, it's small and portable, which means we can actually take it anywhere and do it on almost any body, instead of having to put you in an MRI machine at a hospital. So that's a big advantage, right? The second advantage is how rapidly we're able to actually take data. So that means we can do brain scans of very dynamic activity in the brain. And so that is the basis. EEG is the basis of almost everything I'm going to talk about today. So I said, if I'm going to get information about people's brains, what is the most affordable, quickest way I can do it? That is still under my scope of practice as a mental health clinician. So brain mapping with EEG, QEEG, quantitative EEG, brain mapping was the next natural step. So 20 years ago, when I got into this, what I first started doing was looking at maps of people's brains and then going, what is the information that they can't tell me that I can get from these brain maps? Then they tell me what is going on with them. And with that together, we figure out a way to give them and their brains data back to change things. Because here's the core of everything we're trying to do. Why do we care about neurotech or red light therapy or any of this? Everybody wants the same stuff. We all want to feel safe, connected, and significant.
Yep.
Right? So how are we supposed to do that in today's environment? Bless all of our hearts, right? The main things that really functionally, operationally, that we need to be able to do to feel safe, connected, and significant, competent, capable, is we need state flexibility and we need processing speed. Our brain needs to be able to adapt to what's happening in real time, and our brain needs to have the bandwidth to take in all the inputs, make decisions, and respond in ways that keep us safe and keep us connected and keep us competent. So, how are we supposed to do all that? Well, neurotechnology, EEG, brain training, red light therapy, these are all ways that we as practitioners have been looking at for the last 30, even 50 years and going, how can we have a conversation with your brain directly? I can have a conversation with you. I can tell you things like, hey, it'd be really great if you calm down a little bit when you got really stressed out. That's easy for me to say, like, how would you calm down? But when you're aggravated and someone tells you to calm down, does it help? Not mostly. We just get more irritated, right? However, if you're very stressed out and you start to breathe more slowly and deeply, we'll tell people, slow down, count to 10, take some deep breaths. Now, when people just tell you that, sometimes that's equally irritating. Like, don't tell me what to do, right? But the reality behind why something like that would work is when you get stressed out, a lot of times you hold your breath or you breathe very quickly and shallowly, and you reduce the oxygen that goes into your system. And as soon as you do that, it changes heart rate variability. It changes the parts of your brain that get taken offline so that you don't have to resource them because you have reduced the amount of oxygen that your body has to work with, right? So it goes into literally that fight, flight, freeze mode where it says, I'm very stressed out, I'm under threat, I need to survive, and therefore I'm going to shut down everything I don't need. And usually the number one thing that your brain shuts down when you're under stress is your frontal cortex, the front part of your brain that makes all the decisions, can project consequences into the future, and keeps you out of jail. Okay, why did I say all of that? Because if you are a person who's under stress all the time, and who isn't, are you a human being alive in a society? If you are constantly under threat, then your brain develops the habit of under-resourcing parts of itself to essentially just save on the economy of the energy that you have available, right? So chronically stressed people often have trouble with just calming their bodies down, and also, unbeknownst to them, parts of their brain that they need for critical decision making just start being under-resourced habitually. This is what you need to navigate your life. So how are we supposed to tell the parts of your brain that you've essentially trained to not be as engaged to re-engage, come back online, and help you make better decisions? So that state flexibility and processing speed that I'm talking about require two really important things. One is power, and the other is connectivity. If you have a cell phone and your cell phone has excellent signal and no battery, how well does it work? If your cell phone has great battery and no signal, how well does it work? You need to be connected and you need to be powered up. So for me, red light therapy is the perfect precursor to helping the brain metabolize and generate activity at the mitochondrial cellular level. How are we supposed to tell a brain how to power up? There's a lot of different ways we can do it. Eat the right things, exercise, circulate oxygen through your system. But I mean, let's say you're doing all the right stuff and you still can't quite get there. Something like red light therapy actually creates an energetic activation effect at the cellular level. Okay, that's critical. You need the power up, but you also need the connectivity. So the reason I'm a fan of neurofeedback, either independently or together with red light therapy, is that neurofeedback can help to give your brain information that allows for networking to occur. So how am I need your brain to power up, but I also need it to have the network communication to do complicated things and thinking. So if I only do neurofeedback, I might do some really excellent information or education of your brain to form better neural networks. But if you don't have the juice to use them, it's not going to be as helpful. If I help you create more synaptogenesis, big word, okay, your brain synapses and genesis. Genesis, literally creation, yeah? And the synapses in your brain, synaptogenesis is the creation of new synapses in your brain. Okay, red light therapy is documented to support synaptogenesis, to support the creation of new synapses in your brain. So you can use red light therapy to really charge things up and lay the foundations for forming new connections. And then you can use other therapies to help really refine and improve that connectivity network.
What kind of patients or clients do you find that red light therapy works best for, if you consider things like traumatic brain injury, mild cognitive impairment, or even, I don't want to say run of the mill, but depression, anxiety, and other things that we see so
Yes.
commonly in society today?
Okay, what does red light therapy work for? If we're going to go back to our simple model of we would like for people to feel safe, connected, and significant, if we're going to take the idea that what's really making it hard for everybody to function, I'm going to use another big term here, complexity fatigue. There is too much going on all the time. You cannot keep track of it all. You physically cannot. And everyone is hitting their stress thresholds so rapidly. And one of the things that really is deeply affected for most of us, I think, is sleep hygiene and sleep quality. And one of the things that we do primarily in a sleep state is a ton of system cleaning and repair. Our immune system does a lot of work when we're sleeping, right? And so when you don't have good quality sleep, you begin to notice fairly rapidly the breakdown of sustainable attention and energy. And so if you aren't able to repair at a cellular level in a reliable, sustainable way, then you're going to have reduced immune function. And I don't have to tell you guys, we've had a few years where how well my immune system is doing, how often I get sick, and what it looks like after I get sick has been really main group chat, mainline, main feed discourse, right? Like we're all saying, what does it mean to be sick and have less of an immune function? And so what are the things we can do to support immune function, right? Like my mom's always trying to send me like elderberry extract and all sorts of things to support my immune system, which is lovely. Thanks, Mom. But at the same time, there are very practical cellular metabolic things we could be doing. And so a couple things that red light is documented to do is to help cellular repair and to decrease oxidative stress. If you have insufficiently oxygenated blood and tissues, then you cannot do the repair work you need to either continue to flush out all the things in your body that are not doing you any good, but also to appropriately prioritize the resources that you have to fix what is happening at that cellular level. So red light therapy can help with reducing inflammation. It can help with cellular repair, and it can also help with just generating the energy at the mitochondrial level that you need to engage in any of this tasking. So it's almost like a natural step for people who are looking for full systemic support. Like we talk a lot about how it can help your brain, but your brain is supported by the rest of your body. You can't circulate blood to oxidate, tissues. I mean, how are you supposed to repair anything? So there's several features to red light therapy in specific that I think are very critical for most of us in a given week.
I think you and I are so similar in that, like, people ask me, well, what is red light therapy good for? And I don't want to say it's good for everything because then you look like you're kind of just offering us some panacea.
Yeah.
But when you get down to the molecular and cellular level and talk about the actual repair of various mechanisms to include increased blood flow, improved lymphatic drainage, and so spot on about the improvement with sleep and just aiding natural recovery mechanisms and processes in the brain. I mean, it's safe to say that sleep helps with basically everything: depression, anxiety, motivation, focus. So, when you look at things from a cellular level, it does seem that red light aids in a lot of the core processes that allows for a flexible and powerful brain to manage the complexity of today's life. So I'm 100% on the same page with how you just described that. What would your advice be for people that are getting into red light therapy in terms of both practitioners and consumers? What are some of the mistakes you see being made as we venture into this new and exciting area of treatment for various symptoms of brain disorders? I can't say that, like the FDA limits me from saying that it actually treats depression or anxiety or PTSD, but what we can say is it alleviates symptoms of those various disorders. So what would your advice be for people that are just getting into red light therapy for various brain disorders?
The number one issue I'm seeing with all clinical provision and individuals buying things they use at home. There are two things that are happening. One is that we are not sufficiently documenting our actual application over time, right? So I buy a device, I want to try it out, I want to see what it's doing. If I'm not making notes, if I'm not methodically saying, okay, on this day, I did 20 minutes of this. And on this day, if I am not actually writing it down, it's going to take what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks before I completely forget what I did 3 weeks ago. If I'm not tracking other things that are happening, here's what I ate, here's how much I slept, here's the medication dosage that I changed. If I'm not actually tracking contextually what is going on, what is the environment I'm introducing this therapy into, then I am not going to be able to figure out how it is or isn't helping me and what has affected me. If it turns out I am allergic to bananas and I have a banana smoothie and then I have a terrible 24 hours, right? And I think, oh, I did red light therapy yesterday morning right after I had my banana smoothie. Red light therapy really messed me up. Okay. I mean, this is an extreme, silly example, but actually these things happen. So for you to be able to introduce a therapeutic intervention into your routine, you need to establish a good baseline, and then you need to methodically document what you've been doing, at least for the first month or two, just to get a feel for how it affects you. If you don't do that as a baseline, it will be very challenging to figure out what actually is helping or not helping or affecting you. And I am seeing clinicians not do this in a methodical, concentrated manner, not just individuals buying stuff and trying it out on themselves. So the primary things that I think most people could do that would absolutely maximize the efficacy of using red light therapy are going to probably boil down to three things. Document what you're doing, because if you're not actually writing it down, you're not going to remember 3 weeks later what you did 3 weeks ago and how it did or didn't help you. The second thing is going to be reduce competitive inputs. Stop doing a bunch of things at the same time, because one of the primary mechanisms of red light therapy is helping to repair and resource your brain and your body at the cellular level. In the energy economy of your system, you have a finite amount of resources to work with. So if we're asking your brain to learn something or repair something, and you're asking it to watch TV and listen to a podcast and think about, your dinner menu this week, you are not prioritizing the underlying support that you need. You're not freeing up the resources to take advantage of what the red light can do for you, which I said resources, that's number three. If you are not hydrating, eating some protein, eating some glucose, if you are not putting the fuel in that your body needs to build and repair, the fuel, the building blocks to build things out of, you're again not going to get the level of quality results you could get. So you need to document what you're doing, stop doing a bunch of stuff at the same time so that you don't have any energy available to do the healing and repair and support that the red light therapy will afford you. And third, fuel up your system before you ask it to do construction work.
How important would you say that getting like a snapshot of your brain, like a QEEG, is for this type of training? Is it something that everybody should do or only certain cases? And how much does it inform the training?
Okay, how important is it to get a brain map to decide what I'm doing with my red light therapy? There are a couple things to consider. One is, how sophisticated is my red light therapy device? If I'm just getting the little, multimodal intranasal unit, which I am a huge fan of, absolutely worth the money. If you're going to dip a toe in, it's the perfect starting place. The reason I'm such a fan of the intranasal unit and of maybe the V-Light platform in general is because it has the intranasal component. There's a lot of lovely red light therapy devices on the market. Honestly, everything is better than nothing. I'm a fan of all of it. The reason I ended up in the V-Light camp and that I'm developing on their platform, one of the main reasons is that intranasal component. Because if we're thinking about how to get light to your brain through skull bone, what are the couple places where we have more porous access? Obviously the eyeballs, but there's a limitation to how much light you can put in your eyeballs before it does other stuff that you don't want. Or through the sinus cavity, right? That cribriform plate is very porous, like right behind your sinus cavity. So you can actually hit the bottom of your frontal cortex, that crucial part of the brain that I said sometimes we under-resource habitually and it does not work out for us. You can really have like almost as direct as we can impact on the brain with the intranasal component. So if you are potentially using even just a little intranasal component, just a little intranasal device, if you were using one of V-Light's slightly less sophisticated options, that just have less feature customizability, like that V-Light 4 or the Neuro Duo, it has the two options with the 10 hertz or the 40 hertz, right? The gamma and the alpha. The fewer choices you have, the less important I think it is to get a brain map, right? If you're like, is it better to do an alpha or a gamma protocol? Listen, a brain map will help you know that beforehand, but also just doing each of them a couple times a piece will let you know how you feel afterwards. Like you can do a little bit of, testing on yourself. If you only got a couple options to test between, it's much easier to just try it out and see which one you like better, right? If you are considering a more advanced customizable device like the NeuroPro 2, which is right now probably the leading high-end piece of red light therapy tech on the planet. Like, let's be honest, there isn't anything else at that level right now for customizability. You got 2 intranasal LEDs and 10 across the scalp, and every single one of them has full independent customizability. That's redonkulous.
It's a beast.
It's a beast.
I got it right here. Oh, I got the
Yes, look at
module.
this.
It's gonna soup you up.
It's fantastic. And so the reason why you would consider potentially getting a brain map prior to maybe designing some custom protocols on the NeuroPro 2 is that if you can pick from a lot of different frequencies and a lot of different locations, you will be way more effective if you know what brainwave frequencies and what locations could use a little more attention, either for powering up or for connecting.
Which leads perfectly into my next question. I like to geek out about the neuromodulation part of it. We talked about boosting the mitochondria through the red light. We talked about increased blood flow, but I think that one of the more fun and exciting aspects of it from like neurofeedback practitioner is the actual modulation of brain activity. Could you talk about like what you've seen or how do you conceptualize, I guess, one thing that I've been experimenting with is using gamma to sort of push my brain up into a higher vibrational state during meditation, for example. I guess I'll leave it open-ended with that, but like how much neuromodulation is there from red light therapy and how much effect actually can you get from, targeting different brain regions with different oscillation frequencies, and what are the results of that?
Absolutely. Let's say a couple simple things and a couple medium simple things. Alpha and gamma, 10 hertz, That's 10 times a second we blink the light, 40 hertz, 40 times a second we blink the light. When you were thinking about brain waves, right? People throw around words like delta, beta, theta, right? All of the brain waves are that frequency spectrum where we've got some slower brain waves and some faster brain waves. And where we're hanging out on that spectrum will dictate the job your brain is doing. So the job of the slower waves is integration, repair, resourcing. The jobs of like all the internal stuff, right? The jobs of the faster waves is more externally oriented, faster complex processing, trying to figure out what's going on outside of me and inside of me and interacting with the world, right? So we've got internally oriented slow waves, externally oriented fast waves. They do different jobs. So the 10 hertz alpha really helps. Remember at the beginning, I said, what are the two main things people need? State flexibility and processing speed. Alpha is right in the middle of fast and slow, right? Slow and fast. Let me do the same side so it's not confusing. Slow waves and fast waves. We need to slow down into slow waves to sleep, repair, consolidate, all that good stuff. We need to speed up into fast waves to interact with everything around us. Alpha's in the middle, which means a healthy, functional, flexible brain. Speed up into fast, do a bunch of stuff, relax down into slow, do some repair and consolidation, speed up into fast, back and forth, right? Adaptable based on changes in environment. Is it quiet and dark? Am I laying down with my eyes closed? Calm down, go into slow, right? Am I doing 14 things, driving and trying to eat a hamburger and change the radio? You better be making gamma because you won't survive the trip. Yeah. So the brain's ability to speed up and slow down, a healthy, flexible brain will do that, which means you're going back and forth through alpha. People who don't hang out much in alpha, they get stuck in slow, they can't engage very easily, or they get stuck in fast. They can't relax and calm down and repair. So the alpha setting is almost like the ultimate state flexibility. It helps people either, because people like, I ran alpha and I felt really energized. I ran alpha, I felt really relaxed. Why would you get seemingly opposite responses? It depends on what your system was stuck in and what it helped move. So alpha is excellent for helping with adaptability and flexibility, right? Gamma, the 40 hertz, remember, there's state flexibility and processing speed, the brainwave frequency, brain state you hang out in when you're doing way more complex processing, which means you need more bandwidth, more network communication, more, independent parts of your brain network together to do more stuff at the same time. Gamma is where you do that. So for people who are having trouble engaging, focusing, being present, paying attention to what's going on outside of them and not being so overwhelmed, gamma can be excellent to support that. Some people put on gamma and they say, I feel really energetic. I feel more focused. I feel more engaged. This is great. Other people try gamma and they say, I actually feel more relaxed. Well, that is because for some people, they're stuck a little bit in too slow and the gamma engages them and they're like, I feel connected. This is awesome. For other people, they have actually, because 40 hertz is not where your brain ends. There's a lot faster frequencies to hang out in. And there is the difficulty a lot of us have with what I would call dual inhibition. For you to focus on stuff, focusing is not, ooh, here's a book. I'm going to activate a little line of book-shaped neurons and now I'm reading the book. No. For you to focus on reading a book, you have to inhibit or not pay attention to everything outside of you coming in that could be distracting you. And you have to inhibit everything coming out of you, impulses that you can do other than read the book. So you have to ignore everything outside of you and ignore everything, like everything incoming, everything outcoming. That's a lot of inhibition. That's what a dual inhibition, that also happens in gamma. So for some people who are easily distracted and having a lot of trouble kind of corralling in and focusing, gamma makes them actually feel zoned in. And for them, that feels relaxing and relieving. So people will try the two different options and get, depending on what they've got going on, they'll sort of feel different things. But the ultimate thing they both do is state flexibility and processing speed.
Gotcha. Other than like the more flexibility for picking particular LEDs to stimulate with and what I'm talking about is the NeuroPro 2, the flexibility of the NeuroPro 2. There's an aspect of that where you can more nuance rev up and down frequencies by as little as a 1 hertz. So you could go, at 8 hertz in the alpha and then every 2 minutes go up a hertz, all the way up to 40 if you want. What, in your opinion, what is the advantage to being able to batch together protocols like that and with the flexibility of the NeuroPro 2 over like, for example,
Absolutely.
a two setting system like the Duo?
Okay, so remember I said the two things we care about are power and connectivity. Red light therapy does an excellent job of powering up. Even the simplest versions can help you with that, right? However, we are very much relying on your system's innate capability to then take that sort of energetic support and build stuff with it, right? The more context and framework we can give it for what to build, the better of a job it'll do with the networking. So typically we would look at something like neurofeedback or something that has a explicit network feedback. Like we would turn to something like that for connectivity. But the NeuroPro 2, because it has independent customizability, means that you can pick specific LEDs and you can synchronize them together in behaviors. And that is not just implicit network response, that is explicit requests for network behavior. So you've actually got something that rides that line where you can do some explicit network design. Hey, we're asking this part of the brain and this part of the brain to all hang out at like 12 hertz. Now we're asking them to step up to 13 together. Now we're asking them to step up to 14 together. So you can ask for network and local movement synchronized, and you can ask for it to be asynchronized. Is your whole brain doing too much of the same thing? We can ask for independent behaviors to actually introduce more variability and flexibility into a persistent brain that doesn't have the adaptability. So this actually allows for us to do all the things, the power, the connectivity, the state flexibility, the processing speed, the networking, like all of that is possible potentially with that NeuroPro 2.
And I think that's where we were talking about before is in order to do that, you need the information, the data from something like a quantitative EEG to actually make those calls as far as how you're designing
Yes.
the stimulation protocols, right?
That is where the QEEG brain mapping actually comes into play. You're going to do a much better job making those decisions and designing whatever that custom protocol is going to be. If you can look at what the brain's doing in which frequency bands and in which location, then you can map that to what you're trying to do, programming the device. So that's where it really comes in handy.
It's exciting times, and we have so many tools to choose from. And I think that some of the trends that are happening in the industry is AI and wearables. So how are these different technological forces coming together in your mind as far as the neurotech industry is going? And like, how can we use these tools to advance this work? How do you see that going over the next 5 to 10 years?
So everyone's familiar with the idea of a large language model. I am a big fan of a little language model. So here is what I'm thinking. There are some really interesting key figures and key experts and developers in the neurotech and potentially the clinical industries that we have available to us right now. And one of the things that I do think is a potential strength of what we're calling AI is the capacity to train an agent or a model with particular inputs and say only reference these to make decisions from. What is happening right now with the whole chat GPT-ification of how we go about finding data and making decisions is that there's a very wide scrawling net thrown out there. We're just pulling stuff from wherever, and we're currently not really validating or verifying the relevance or accuracy of the sources that we're pulling together, right? So when it comes to potentially taking the strengths of like larger pattern recognition, dot connecting, extrapolating models that we could be using to synthesize bigger data sets down into good decisions, right? I think that the perfect way for us to consider using that going forward is to build specific discrete data sets to potentially train some decision or recommendation making models that reflect the actual firsthand skilled expertise of individual clinicians or developers or innovators who are bringing 30, 40, 50 years of experience to making clinical decisions. Like when you find somebody who's very good at something, they are their own internal data set. They will make connections and generate ideas and be creative with what's possible in ways you'll never get from a machine. It's just not how they work. So combine the best of both worlds? Could we train little discrete, specific clinical models to then reference to possibly make recommendations in the like it's almost like can we clone or replicate skilled practitioners? Right? I think we've gone a bit too big and too wide. I think that we could potentially develop agents based on more discrete modeling. And I think this is the perfect combination of what the tech can do, but it's a little bit more IFTTT. We're taking what's good about the decision making, the causal decision making off of smaller data sets. Because listen, not all information is created equal.
Right. Yeah, you'd have the Penijean AI, and every
Right?
time it would ask itself, what would Penijean do for
The
each
pocket
clinical
penny
case?
right there in
Yeah.
your app. You know?
And do you think that this could be delivered as a wearable format at home for people at some point?
I will say this. I'm already trying to work on it with a couple of companies that are doing home use headsets. A year or two is going to go by whether we do it or not. So, and I do think the next decade of wearable, affordable, accessible home use tech absolutely has to have clinical expertise capabilities built into it because you, as the home user, do not need to spend 10 years trying to figure out how to optimize using something, right? If you're going to pay several $100s a month or a couple grand for a piece of technology, then there should be something that comes with it that supports as quickly and possibly, your optimizing your efficacy or shortening your learning curve. And I think this is the only way that tech is going to be scalable and sustainable is if we combine clinical expertise access with home use affordable tech.
Yeah, and I think it's a perfect place to put a plug in for you, for the audience that's listening to this and is really interested in building these systems and getting data sets for an AI to train on. Penijean's data set is an example of, your knowledge, your data set would be something to train on and to consult with at least. So how can people reach out to you if they're wanting to collaborate with you to build these systems?
You are certainly welcome to reach out to me at whyismybrainlikethis@gmail.com or take a peek at my website, penijean.com. I am currently in the process of working on a handful of projects to bring products to market, collaborating with people or platforms like V-Light Technologies and a couple of other neurofeedback platforms because we are at that critical juncture point right now with we need to modernize, systematize, and make adaptable the tech. Like we've had tremendous technological advances in the last 10 to 15 years, and we are still using like 30-year-old models for brain training. And I think we are on the cusp of something really industry changing.
I do too. And I can't wait to see what you're working on because I think that your expertise is so sorely needed in the field. And I really appreciate you coming on Tech for Psych here with me to discuss it, Penijean.
It's been delightful.
Thank you.